Fall is less than a month away, and so too spooky season. Hey everyone, welcome back to the next chapter. My name is Christopher Navo, and I'm going to be your host. If this is your first time joining, thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the content. Today's video is going to be something a little different. With September coming up, so too is fall. And with that, one of my favorite seasons, October, aka Halloween, aka spooky season. I've talked briefly in my channel about working in some horror, suspense, thriller books into my October TBR a little bit, just to kind of mix up a little bit of the predominant fantasy and sci-fi reads that I usually have going on. I'm, to be frank, not too versed in horror books or thriller. I'm not really big into slasher movies or anything of that sort. I do like some psychological horror, kind of things that mess up with your mind a little bit. Those are kind of fun movies anyway. But books, I'm really only kind of limited to some of the Stephen King I've read. Now, I have put together a video of books by Stephen King that I still have yet to read that I want to. And so I wanted to find out some other interesting thriller, some suspense, even some horror books that are out there that aren't by Stephen King. Back in April, I put out a poll to you guys, the viewers, asking for your recommendations. And I got a pretty hefty amount. So I'm actually going to have to split this video into two parts, just so this video doesn't go for a very long time. So I'm going to have my first batch in this video, and then probably sometime in mid-September, I will put out the second video of the other half of recommendations by you guys. So I thank you very much for all of the people who put in a submission to this. So we have a lot of cool reads on this list that I'm really excited to talk about. If you're not on this video, you will chances are be on the second video. So without any further ado, let's get started. This first recommendation comes from Nick from another booktube channel, and he writes, "A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay is my go-to horror recommendation. Absolutely love it and never had anyone disappointed by it." A Head Full of Ghosts follows the Barrett family as they grapple with a distressing situation involving their teenage daughter Marjorie. Her increasingly erratic behavior leads her parents to believe an evil entity might possess her. Desperate for a solution, the family agrees to have their experiences filmed for a reality TV show. The story is recounted by Marjorie's younger sister, Mary, as an adult reflecting on the disturbing events that have unfolded. This novel explores themes of mental illness, reality versus perception, and the effects of media sensationalism on a family in crisis. It blurs the lines between supernatural horror and psychological thriller, keeping readers questioning the true nature of Marjorie's affliction. This next recommendation comes from Rambling Collector 3165, Twisted Justice by E.L. Jefferson. This novel was disturbing and absolutely horrifying in a variety of ways. I've actually covered it on my channel previously, but I would love to hear the thoughts about it from another reader. Dr. Brian Fields is a renowned psychologist with a hideous past and dark secrets. He is a man driven by an insatiable hunger and the need to manipulate others to do his bidding. Among his patients are some of the most deranged sociopaths of our society has created. He cares for them and allows them to walk among us. He protects them as long as they play by his rules. Under Dr. Fields' care, these patients will never be brought to trial to answer for their crimes, but their victims scream for justice, even if it's twisted justice. So these next two book recommends come from one person, and that's Esme at Esme Rosaline. And she is a very prominent fantasy book reviewer. So if she recommends these are probably pretty good reads. The first one she goes, Crossroads by Laurel Hightower, definitely left an impact. And Summer Sun by Lee Mandello was great queer horror as well. Oh, and all the retellings by Christina Henry. Sorry, can't just pick one. Well, I'm going to cover Crossroads and Summer Suns here. This novella follows the story of Chris, a grieving father who's struggling to cope with the loss of his young daughter. Consumed by grief and guilt, Chris becomes obsessed with the idea of making contact with his daughter's spirit. He seeks out a medium who claims to have the ability to communicate with the dead. The novella explores themes of loss, grief, and the lengths people will go to find closure. As Chris delves deeper into the world of the supernatural, he must confront his own demons and grapple with the consequences of his actions. The story combines emotional depth of elements of horror and the paranormal, making for a poignant and haunting exploration of a father's love and desperation. Summer Suns centers on Andrew and Eddie, childhood friends who reunite for a road trip to confront their past and secrets. The story follows their journey to a rural town where they uncover memories and mysteries tied to their shared history. As they navigate their complex relationship and unearth hidden truths, the novel delves into themes of friendship, love, identity, and the lingering impact of traumatic events. Summer Suns blends elements of LGBTQ romance, coming of age, and mystery, creating a narrative that explores the bonds between its characters by uncovering layers of intrigue and emotion. Next recommendation comes from Joseph, author and booktuber, J.R. Carl, and he recommends The Rising by Brian Keene. The Rising is a horror novel that presents a unique take on the zombie apocalypse genre. The story is set in a world where the dead are reanimated due to an ancient cosmic force. As the dead rise and humanity struggles to survive, a father named Jim Thornton embarks on a perilous journey to rescue his young son, who has been kidnapped by a group of criminals. Along the way, Jim forms alliances with other survivors, including a nun and a Marine. The novel explores themes of survival, sacrifice, and the resilience of human spirit in the face of unimaginable horror. The Rising offers a blend of action, suspense, and supernatural elements, providing a fresh perspective on the classic zombie narrative. Next we have Pat at Pat's Mythos. He writes, Ghost Story by Peter Straub. Similar to King in some regards, they even wrote a few books together, but also unique in its own right. Atmospheric, dreadful, eerie, was a great Halloween October read last year. Ghost Story is a horror novel that follows a group of elderly friends in a small town who are haunted by a dark secret from their past. The story begins with the death of one of their friends, which prompts the survivors to confront a terrifying entity that seems to be exacting revenge on them for a mistake they've made many years ago. As the group grapples with supernatural occurrences and disturbing memories, they must unravel the mysteries of their shared history to put an end to the malevolent force that is plaguing them. Ghost Story blends elements of psychological horror, mystery, and the supernatural, delving into themes of guilt, aging, and the consequences of past actions. The novel keeps readers on edge as it weaves together a chilling atmosphere and intricate character dynamics to create a haunting and suspenseful narrative. So these next two books were recommended by two different viewers. First up, we have Black and White Cookie at 8967 and Jan 2 Brat. And they both recommend The Ruins by Scott Smith and The Troop by Nick Cutter. Both are fantastic and creepy as hell. The Ruins is a novel that revolves around a group of friends on vacation in Mexico. Their relaxing trip takes a terrifying turn when they venture off the beaten path to explore ancient Mayan ruins. Soon they find themselves trapped and besieged by an otherworldly threat lurking within the overgrown vegetation. As their situation grows increasingly dire, the group faces physical and psychological challenges, testing the limits of their survival instincts and their relationship with one another. The Ruins combines elements of survival horror, psychological tension, and the unknown, creating a chilling and suspenseful narrative as the characters grapple with their dire circumstances and the malevolent force that haunts the ancient ruins. The Troop follows a group of Boy Scouts and their Scoutmaster on a camping trip to a remote island. Their idyllic outing takes a dark and gruesome turn when they encounter a stranger who is infected with a horrifying and rapidly spreading illness. As the infection begins to affect the island's wildlife and even the scouts themselves, the group becomes trapped with no way to escape. The story delves into themes of survival, the unraveling of social norms, and the psychological terror of facing an unimaginable threat. The troupe combines elements of body horror, psychological tension, and the struggle of survival, creating a chilling and unsettling story as the characters confront the horrors of both the external threat and their own inner demons. This next recommendation is by YouTuber Pick Your Pop Culture Poison, and she writes, I'm thinking of ending things by Ian Reed, although debatable if it's horror. Well, it does fall under the thriller category, so we're going to cover it here. I'm Thinking of Ending Things is a psychological thriller that follows a young couple, Jake and his girlfriend, on a road trip to visit Jake's parents at their remote farmhouse. As they journey together, the girlfriend reflects on the relationship and contemplates ending things. However, their trip takes a bizarre and unsettling turn as they arrive at the farmhouse, where strange occurrences begin to unfold. The novel explores themes of identity, reality, and the fragility of the human mind. As the couple's perceptions unravel, the story blurs the lines between psychological horror and surreal uncertainty. I'm Thinking of Ending Things delves into the unease of the unknown and the complexity of human emotions, creating a disconcerting narrative that keeps readers questioning the true nature of the events taking place. Next up, we have Roger, and he recommends a good old classic, Frankenstein. He writes, Frankenstein is my favorite. Gothic novels are my thing. Frankenstein, a classic horror story, tells the story of Victor Frankenstein, a young scientist who becomes obsessed with the idea of creating life. Using his knowledge of science and alchemy, he manages to bring a creature to life, but he is horrified by the monstrous appearance of his creation. As the creature struggles to find acceptance and understanding in a world that rejects him, Victor faces the consequences of his actions and the moral dilemmas of playing God. The novel explores themes of creation, responsibility, and the consequences of unchecked ambition, and the nature of humanity. It is considered one of the foundational works of science fiction and Gothic literature, raising questions about the ethics of scientific exploration and the boundaries between life and death. Then our final recommendation for part 1 is from Jake from The Bookish Drummer, and he writes, my favorite non-king horror book is Imaginary Friend. Never has an author made me feel as scared for the characters. This book was anxiety-inducing, and I love that the author took risk with the story elements. Imaginary Friend centers around a young boy named Christopher and his mother Kate. After they move to a new town to escape an abusive relationship, Christopher disappears for 6 days in the nearby woods. Where he returns, he displays an uncanny intelligence and claims to have been guided by an unseen friend. As their lives begin entangled with mysterious events and a sinister presence, Kate realizes that her son's imaginary friend might be more real and more dangerous than she ever imagined. The novel explores themes of supernatural forces, parental love, and the boundaries between reality and the unknown. It blends elements of psychological suspense, horror, and coming of age, creating a suspenseful story that keeps readers guessing about the true nature of the imaginary friend and the darkness that surrounds it. So that's it for part 1. I will have part 2 out sometime in mid-September. Links to the booktubers who provided me a recommendation will be linked in the description below. Leave a comment. Let me know if you've read any of these recommendations or if you have any additional recommendations to add. I can always do a third video to this. That's all I have for now. My name is Christopher Navo. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And I hope to see you in the next chapter. Take care. October read last year. It's a big mess. Big mess. Next up, we have Pat at Pat's Mythos. Next up, we have Pat at Pat's Mythos. Next up, we have Pat from Pat at Pat Myth. Next up, we have Pat at Pat Mytho. Pat Mythos. Sorry, Pat. That's all I'm saying.